From never saying, "I'll be right back," to trusting your instincts. These are movies that followed Scream's rules to survive a horror movie. When we look at horror movies, it's hard to find one that's influenced the horror genre as a whole as much as the Scream franchise. In 1996, Wes Craven's groundbreaking horror film, Scream, introduced audiences to a new set of rules for surviving a horror movie. The film's self-awareness and clever commentary on the horror genre led to its massive success, and it quickly became a cult classic. Many horror films that followed took inspiration from these rules, creating memorable and thrilling experiences that catered to fans of the genre. So, how about we take a look at some of the main rules, and even some unspoken rules. First up, if you're ever in a horror movie, don't even think about saying, "I'll be right back." In Scream, one of the most memorable rules is to never utter the phrase, "I'll be right back," as this often signifies impending doom for the character. It's happened in horror movies and general thrillers. A character says they'll be right back, and guess what? They don't come back. But interesting enough, films like 2012's Cabin in the Woods and 2015's The Final Girls cleverly play with this trope, with characters either avoiding the phrase altogether or deliberately saying it to defy expectations. Another generic rule that many find hard to follow is, due to what we'll say, natural urges, is to not have sex or do drugs. Talk about a buzzkill. Scream also emphasizes that characters who engage in illicit activities such as sex or drug use are often the first to meet their demise. This rule has been followed by many horror movies since, and we've seen it time and time again. Someone is either drunk, on drugs, or having an intimate moment. And just like that, they're sliced and diced. Movies such as 2014's It Follows' entire premise revolved around this, with a sexually transmitted curse running rampant. 2017's The Babysitter and Happy Death Day also abide by this rule, ensuring that characters who partake in such behavior face the consequences. And the consequences felt when you're alone, well, they always seem to be worse. This brings us to our next rule: never split up. The idea of sticking together is a crucial survival rule in horror movies, as splitting up often leads to characters getting picked off one by one. We've all seen it. Someone in the group comes up with a bright idea to split up and cover more ground. All the while, everyone screaming at the screen knows exactly what's about to happen. Films like 2011's You're Next and 2018's A Quiet Place showcase the importance of staying together and working as a team to outwit the threat. In both films, the characters' reliance on each other and their collective ingenuity help them navigate the deadly situations they find themselves in. This rule is doubled down when a character hears a strange noise. For the love of God, don't investigate it yourself! Movies like The Strangers, 2008, and Hush, 2016, adhere to this rule, with characters attempting to confront the unknown threat together or seeking help from others rather than going it alone. Finally, some characters with common sense! Another rule that is recurring in Scream and many other horror movies is it's always the boyfriend. In the original Scream and in Scream 5, this rule was front and center, with fan-beloved Dewey reinforcing this rule in Scream 5. This rule was followed by 1998's Heathers and again in 2011's You're Next, showing it can be the ones closest to you who wants to cause you the most harm. But when the boyfriend is usually the villain, guess who's usually the hero? That's right, the girlfriend, which many avid horror films call the rule, beware of the final girl. The concept of the final girl has been a staple in horror movies for decades. Scream acknowledges this trope, making it clear that the last remaining female character is often the one to confront and defeat the villain, whether it be Cindy Prescott or one of the newer protagonists in Sam and Tara Carpenter. Films like 2005's The Descent and 2019's Ready or Not and the Halloween franchise all follow this rule, presenting strong, resourceful women who ultimately face off against the antagonist and come out victorious. But sometimes an apparent victory is anything but. And that's why you should never assume the killer is dead, which is one of the most crucial rules in Scream, as they often come back for one last scare. Films like 2000's Final Destination and 2004's Saw follow this rule, where antagonists are seemingly defeated only to return and wreak more havoc. By keeping this rule in mind, audiences are always prepared for a potential twist or surprise resurrection. Whether they've been shot, stabbed, lit on fire, or run over, it's a good chance they'll be coming back for one last scare. With this in mind, another rule is to never underestimate the power of the supernatural. Many horror movies involve supernatural elements, and it's essential to not underestimate their power. Films like 1973's The Exorcist and 2010's Insidious highlight the need to take supernatural threats seriously and seek help from experienced professionals or spiritual authorities when dealing with the paranormal. Because whether they're human or not, every horror movie antagonist has some sort of supernatural element. You see it in some horrors, and others not so much. That they embrace self-awareness, which usually makes the films a lot easier to understand, and doesn't have to dumb down each character to the point where they're running upstairs instead of the front door when getting chased. Perhaps the most iconic aspect of Scream is its self-awareness and meta-commentary on the horror genre. Films like 2012's The Cabin in the Woods and 2009's Zombieland follow suit, embracing their awareness of horror movie rules and using them to create unique and engaging narratives. This self-aware approach to storytelling allows filmmakers to surprise audiences by subverting established tropes or leaning into them for comedic effect. A fairly common occurrence in horror films is when the movie is based around an isolated location. Isolated locations often provide the perfect setting for a horror movie, as they create a sense of vulnerability and isolation for the characters. And when characters were isolated in Scream, it's more often than not that they got. Movies like 1980's The Shining and 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre serve as cautionary tales for those who venture into remote areas, emphasizing the importance of staying vigilant and being aware of your surroundings. It's another one of those frustrating tropes because when I know there's a killer around, the last place I'd want to be is in a secluded location without any chance of help. Now, that would really make me panic, and horror fans know exactly how important it is to keep your emotions in check, because horror movies often prey on the characters' emotions, causing them to make rash decisions that can prove fatal. Films like 2018's Hereditary and 2019's Midsommar demonstrate the importance of keeping your emotions in check, as giving into fear, anger, or grief can lead to disastrous consequences. But there is a problem with being too calm and even overconfident. Overconfidence can be deadly in horror movies, as characters who believe they are invincible often become the first victims. We've all seen it. You see a macho man boasting about how strong he is, how he's not scared, how he'd wish the killer would try him, and within 10 minutes he's dead. Films like 2004's Saw and 2005's Hostel remind viewers of the importance of staying humble. And finally, our last and one of the most important rules we've seen followed in Scream and many other horror movies is trusting your instincts. Cindy Prescott showcases this in the Scream film a number of times. She is aware someone isn't who they appear to be, regardless of her relationship with them, and ultimately makes the right choice. Films like 1978's Halloween and 2014's The Babadook also demonstrate that your gut feeling is the best guide when it comes to making decisions in the face of danger. So, from trusting your instincts to never saying you'll be right back, these were the movies that followed Scream's rules to survive a horror movie.